To open the regular city council, successor agency, and housing authority meeting of April 10th, 2023. And I'd like to ask, it's 6:01 hours, so I'd like to ask Captain Walker to please introduce Explorer Lieutenant Fernandez to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like you said, this is one of our explorers, Ms. Fernandez from our Yucaipa Station Explorer Group. So, go ahead.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, will you please call roll?
Councilmember Gardner. Here. Councilmember Thorpe.
Here.
Councilmember Venable.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Duncan.
Here.
Mayor Beaver.
Here.
All present.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. City Manager, are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes, sir.
Thank you, sir. At this time, I'd like to move on to special presentations, and I'm going to announce that we have two special presentations. The first one is the declaration of DMV Donate Life Month. I'm going to go ahead and read this proclamation first, and then I will call up the speaker. So the proclamation of the City of Yucaipa proclaiming the month of April as DMV Donate Life Month, whereas organ, eye, tissue, marrow, and blood donations are life-giving acts recognized worldwide as expressions of compassion to those in need. And whereas more than 100,000 individuals nationwide and more than 20,000 in California are currently on the National Organ Transplant waiting list, and on average, 17 people die each day while waiting. And whereas the need for donated organs is especially urgent in Hispanic, Latino, and African American communities, and whereas a single individual's donation of the heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, pancreas, and small intestine can save up to 8 lives, and whereas donation of tissue can save and heal the lives of more than 75 others, and whereas organ donors saved more than 42,000 lives last year, the most ever, and whereas any person can register to be an organ, eye, and tissue donor regardless of age or medical conditions, and whereas being a registered donor does not impact the quality of life-saving medical care a person receives in an emergency, and whereas California residents can sign up with the Donate Life California Donor Registry online at any time, and whereas California residents can sign up to be an organ, eye, and tissue donor when applying for a renewal of their California driver's license or ID cards at the California Department of Motor Vehicles. And whereas California residents interested in saving a life through living kidney donation may visit the livingdonationcalifornia.org website. And now therefore be it resolved that in recognition of National Donate Life Month, the month of April 2023 is hereby proclaimed DMV Donate Life Month in the city of Yucaipa, and in doing so, we encourage all Californians to check yes online and when applying for or renewing their driver's license or ID card at the DMV, signed by the Yucaipa City Council. I'd like to ask that Katrin Mance, no presenter? Well, either way, I think it's phenomenal. 42,000 lives, that's very impressive. So this is going to be, this has already been signed, and now this is our proclamation for the month of April. And we will take a vote on that and this one at the end. The next proclamation, this one is near and dear to my heart, having worked crimes against children for 4 years. The proclamation of the City of Yucaipa proclaiming the month of April as Child Abuse Prevention Month. Whereas all children have the right to receive the care, protection, and guidance a family provides, to be free from harm, and to have their physical, emotional, and educational needs met. State and federal governments have proclaimed April 2023 as Child Abuse Prevention Month for the purpose of promoting community involvement in the prevention of child abuse. And whereas nearly 30,000 children in San Bernardino County were referred to Children and Family Services for suspected child abuse and neglect in 2022. And whereas the Adverse Childhood Experiences study conducted by Dr. Folletti and Robert Anda demonstrates long-term health, social, and economic risks that result from childhood trauma. And whereas the prevention of child abuse requires rigorous solutions, energy, strength, determination, and commitment from concerned citizens and the entire community, the County of San Bernardino provides services and professionals in the field of child abuse who are dedicated, compassionate, and skilled in the prevention of child abuse. And whereas, with the blue ribbon as the international symbol for child abuse prevention, the San Bernardino County Children's Network, in partnership with the County Board of Supervisors, the member agencies of the San Bernardino County Children's Policy Council and Child Abuse Prevention Committee, have planned a blue ribbon media campaign, the 24th annual Shine a Light on Child Abuse Award, during the month of April to increase awareness of child abuse. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Yucaipa hereby proclaim April 2023 as Child Abuse Prevention Month in the City of Yucaipa and encourages citizens, organizations, schools, nonprofits, businesses, and other entities in the community to engage in activities and events that assist in the efforts to prevent child abuse and provide for children physical, emotional, and developmental needs. Signed, Yucaipa City Council. Can I please ask that San Bernardino County Assistant Executive Officer Diane Rundles please come to the podium? Thank you, ma'am. What a phenomenal, altogether worthy cause to prevent child abuse. It was an honor for me to sign this, so, but please let us know what the county's doing and anything else that people in the gallery or the City of Yucaipa can do to help prevent child abuse.
Good evening, City Council members. Thank you so much for having us, and thank you for declaring April Child Abuse Prevention Month. That's very important for all of us to recognize the importance of keeping our children safe. As you know, you provided some statistics there today. There were 50 substantiated cases in the City of Yucaipa alone. What community members can do to support our children is if they see something that's concerning, dial 211. That'll take us to the Child Abuse Prevention Network, or hotline, I'm sorry, and allow our social workers, our professionals to investigate if there is any potential child abuse. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you, ma'am. And we'd like to come down and have a photograph taken with you in this proclamation, if that's okay.
All right. Ready, 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
All right, this time I'll call for a motion. If there's a motion to approve the two proclamations, is there a motion?
I'll move approval.
And is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to public comment. If there are speakers that wish to be heard, please fill out a speaker slip that's in the back of the room. Hand it to our city clerk. She will hand it to me and I will read off the name. As a reminder, each speaker has 3 minutes to speak. We're going to enforce that 3-minute rule. Please maintain decorum and civility while you're speaking. Give those people who are speaking the respect to be heard. We in turn from the council will do the same and respect all persons' voices. No interrupting, no heckling, and no applause, please. Our first speaker is Adam, is it Eventor from the SoCal Gas?
Evan Caldworth. It's Adam Eventov, Public Affairs Manager for SoCal Gas, here to provide a 3-minute update on gas, on all the things that have been happening. So, excuse me. So gas prices reached a historic high in January, and they have continued to fall. Most of that has been due to unprecedented demand, and with that, limited supply. So based on supply and demand, you saw very high prices in January. If your bill was around $300 in January, it should have dropped to about $165 in February and around $100 in March. We're waiting to see what happens in April. You should have also received a $50.77 credit from the CPUC that normally you would get around springtime, but that should have appeared on your February or March bill. SoCal Gas does not set the price of gas. We charge you for the fee of bringing the service to your home, but what goes in those pipes is basically free market, and that's what we saw as unprecedented demand due to the winter and for other reasons, raising the rates, or raising the price. Recently, SoCal Gas is delaying any collection of activities to overdue bills on residential homes, and we will not disconnect overdue bills. And we have paused all collection of field activities as of February 1st. We continue to inform and offer several ways to help. So if you have constituents that might need financial assistance with your utilities, either go to a community action partnership organization or go to socalgas.com/assistance to find medical baseline, income qualified, one-time grant, and other programs. Also, because we still have a chilly spring, we do recommend that folks continue with their conservation efforts. Turn down that thermostat, turn down your water heater, wash your clothes in cold water. Go out to your local home improvement center and add some insulation and weather stripping. It does make a difference, it really does. In addition, we have announced a $10 million program in which we will be funding a variety of different efforts, including $5 million for food distribution centers, $4 million for food banks, and then $1 million for a restaurant care resiliency program. So for more information about everything I've spoken to, all roads lead to socalgas.com, where you can find everything from rebates to customer service. If you're not comfortable going to the internet, you can always go to our customer service hotline, 1-800-427-2200. That's timing.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, Dr. Hanson Wong, followed by Ms. Colleen Wong.
So I'm going to start by having them put a picture up, I hope. I don't know if you recognize that person, but from the city, he supported our thing on Saturday morning. And I hope that our city council members that can make it will support our other events. This was the first inaugural Bunny Hop, and I think it's important for you to show your community your support. And so I would highly recommend that you attend. The committee meetings, a lot of them are actually very enthusiastic and want to do the right thing for the city and needs their sponsors from the city council to be there and support and guide us. So I, again, highly recommend that. Part of being healthy is the organ donation makes people healthier, as well as the child abuse prevention program. So again, I support both of those as well. In addition, just to let you have some time frames so you can set aside some time, sometime in June, towards the end of June, is a night walk run. It's a fun run with glow sticks, and kids will like that as well as some of you. And then the turkey trot, and we're looking at possibly in about 9 months doing a 10-man. But again, it has to be worked out. We have to have sponsorship and, of course, funds and support. So please, support us the best you can. I want to shout out to Councilman Venable. He's attended 3 or 4 of the different council meetings and help us out with that as well. I know that some things are more important to the council members than others, but again, to the city, all of these things are important. And if they're not, then just cancel them. I mean, we need as much support as we can. A lot of the community team members, college, high school, football team, track team, the explorers, they all contributed, as well as many people from many areas, including the North Bench, which some of you dislike. They also came and supported the event as well. So again, support is very important. We had bunny ears for people. We had a mill with a bunny on it. And you should see the strollers coming along through the endpoint, and as well as the people with the dogs, and also kids this high making it through the 5K. It was just awesome. Anyway, my time's almost up. Thank you so much. Please support us.
Thank you, Doctor. Ms. Colleen Wong, followed by Cecilia Johns.
He had quite the nice things to say to you guys. We started a couple weeks ago talking about our new hires here that Mr. Mann hired. I'm sure they're perfectly nice people. This city council approved funding for these new hires without argument, because after all, you've allocated or allowed all of that to go to Mr. Mann. You're not even allowed to influence or persuade him as to who he can hire. After 2 months of being here, well, 2 weeks, but 2 months that he was here observing, he had discussions with the council members and told us about the issues that he was going to have priority. He said he was going to place a couple of fire engines in reserve, staff a paramedic squad, start a Narcan program, and place an order for a fire ladder truck. All of this after spending 2 months. That's a lot of money that he's planning to spend. Now he's suggesting that you are actually doing a class and comp study. You're doing this after he hired the people. He just did that evaluation. According to him, he spent 2 months doing it. Is that not good enough? We asked the council to hire a consultant before they hired new staff, and I guess it died, though none of us seemed to be aware that it had died. And so now we're wondering, after the fact, why are we doing a comp study? Why are we doing that? Are you planning to hire more people? Or is Mr. Mann planning to hire more people? My main issue here is that you guys suggested last year in August that the citizens weren't letting you know what they wanted, and now, Mr. Duncan, you tell us we can only have 45 minutes, and we better do that and not be repetitive. So I'm going to talk to you about something I found in a file that I had inadvertently filed in the wrong spot. I was going to put in a new garden, and I pulled out my gardening file. And I ran into a plan that was scheduled in 2006 with the Empire Company, where they were going to develop 318 acres. And they were told that they couldn't do half-acre lots because it was against the general plan. And so guess what they came back with? 1-acre lots. Imagine that. And they came out, and it's remarkable, really. There's 318 acres.
Ma'am, your time has expired.
Well, they got 100 acres open space, and all they had to do was say, it's not in the general plan.
Thank you, ma'am. The next speaker, Ms. Cecilia Johns, by Mr. George Sardison.
Good evening, Cecilia Johns, 33175 Colorado in Yucaipa. Well, each time Mr. Duncan opens his mouth as at a council meeting, it's deeply embarrassing. He makes all of us new council members look bad. Regarding the smoking ordinance, that was discussed at the last council meeting. It was specifically about a Yucaipa ordinance that would prohibit smoking in public places, including City Hall and facilities such as YPAC, parks, community centers, buses, and public transport stops. However, in typical Duncan fashion, he had to make it about himself by inserting a little dig to the North Bench mob. He said if somebody lives on the North Bench, Duncan asked, and they decide to walk down the street smoking a cigarette, we're going to ban that? Are we going to ban smoking in their front yard or their backyard? I mean, how far are we going to go with this if we decide to do something? What does the smoking ordinance have to do with the North Bench people? It is insulting to our constituents and to the people of Yucaipa. Maybe he should just stay with blah, 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 blah.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. George Sardison, followed by Ms. Martha Glubka.
Before I begin, I would ask that the chair, if we return to the policy and the procedure of asking people to state their name and address for the record. That's been a practice here at our city council and planning commission meetings for many years. And it's really fallen by the wayside. It makes it difficult for some members of the gallery and probably for some of you to know who's speaking and where they're from. People just walk up here and start talking. The last planning commission meeting was a big disappointment. The chair didn't know which was up or down, didn't know what to open or close the hearing. Nobody was stating their name or address. I think it's important for everybody to know, whether you're here or listening online, who is addressing you and who are we listening to. Let me see if I got this all right. Quoting from the last council meeting. Some from the North Bench have pushed their luck lately. I won't tolerate any of the stuff that's been going on lately. Mayor Beaver has tolerated some, but I won't tolerate it. I'm getting tired of you guys coming here and saying the same thing over and over again. I have the sergeant sitting over here, and if I need to, I'll have someone escorted out of here. I'm limiting public comment to 45 minutes, so pick your speakers wisely, speak quickly, get your point across. The last 4 meetings, we've had 15 people get up and say the same thing, and we get the message. We understand what you're saying. These are all quotes from Councilman Duncan, and he understands what people are saying. All we hear is, I won't tolerate it. Mayor Beaver, is this how you want the meetings conducted by the assistant mayor in your absence? Council members Thorpe, Venable, and Garner, are you comfortable with this type of behavior by your fellow council member towards members of the community who choose to exercise their First Amendment right under public comment as listed on the agenda? Ever heard of the word censure? I choose to use the term assistant mayor since the mayor pro tem suggests integrity and dignity in behavior and respect towards others. By the way, there are lots of us that have spoken from the podium recently that are not from the North Bench, that appreciate the vistas and views of that part of our community that is designated as rural living and stand with the residents who continue to object to anything other than the land use defined in the general plan. Everyone wants to look ahead in their daily lives and not focus on the past. But the date of January 9th and the action by the 3 of you that voted to cause the departure of City Manager Ray Casey cannot be erased from the calendar and the public discussion.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Martha Glubka, followed by Mr. Kevin Miskin.
Hi, good morning, or good morning. I'm off a little today. Good evening. My name is Martha Glubka, 13494 Mesa Terrace Drive, Yucaipa, California. And no, I am not from the North Bench either, just to clarify it. Some of what's been said tonight was kind of part of what I was going to do, so I'm going to wing this a little bit. I'm going to start out with talking about the last meeting, March 24th. Had a lot of things to think about, some of the things that the gentleman before me just talked about. After that meeting, I had a chance to talk to a couple of our council members and Chris Mann after the meeting. And I had the feeling that they also do love the city. And that something I thought, why could we not have some type of an open forum with you guys where we can talk without having this 3-minute thing and everything to try to get the city back on track, because it's obvious the animosity. And I think it was made very clear at the last meeting that a lot of that is coming from Councilman Duncan. I see your smirk right now. It's just not okay to be this way with people. We love our city, and I like to think all you do. And I think that as a senior councilman, he should be a mentor to you guys that are new coming in. Well, I'm going to take that back. I don't think he should be your mentor. Please do not show the same attitude towards us, because that's what's creating a lot of problems right now within the city and within the people. We got lectured on so many things at the last meeting that we walked out of here angry and disgusted, and our jaws were dropping, going, what the heck? Who is this person? I used to support you when I was in business. I don't anymore. I think your time's up. Mine's about to be. I just think that being humble and keeping your integrity intact is so important, and I wish that we could look at something somehow to get maybe a group of citizens and a group from you guys and just sit down and hash out some things and try to get back as a team, so that we feel you're working for us and you feel like we're supporting you. I think that's very important. I don't want it to be like politics in Washington, because that's obviously not working in this country right now. And we're better than that. We're just much better than that, and I think it's something to be thought about. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. If you feel comfortable, can you please provide your phone number to our city clerk so I can get it, please?
Do what?
Your phone number? Can you give it to our city clerk so I can call you, please? Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Kevin Miskin. If you could please state your address, followed by Mr. Travis Heaps.
Kevin Miskin, 35472 Ivy Avenue. First of all, I wanted to give kudos to our Healthy Yucaipa Committee. I had the opportunity to participate in that event as a volunteer. I didn't run it, but I was happy to see our city manager participate in that. So thank you for your support as well. I wasn't able to attend the last two city councils because of work commitments, but I do listen to them online, and in addition to that, I wanted to respond to Bobby Duncan, who made a comment using my name last month when he said, Mr. Miskin, SB 9 does apply to this city. Never at any time have I ever said that SB 9 does not apply to this city. Never. That was a mischaracterization. What I have said over and over and over again is that SB 9 does not apply to Serrano Estates or any of the development-led projects. It applies only to homeowners. And even a homeowner who owns two pieces of property side by side can only split one of their lots and can't split the other lot. That needs to be clarified, because there's been a lot of misinformation, I think, shared with the City Council. The Planning Commission was certainly confused when they met the last time. And I think it's important that everybody recognizes that SB 9 only applies to homeowners. And it really has not, it's really been quite a fizzle in the state of California. I think after 1 year, there have been less than 100 people who have done it. I think 24 in the county of Los Angeles. And so I think it's important that we get accurate and factual information. And I think that we also need to have time, if we're going to be called out by name, there ought to be time for us to correct the record when there are mischaracterizations of what the people are saying. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Following speaker, Mr. Travis Heaps, followed by Ms. Brandy Hickman. If you could please provide your address to the council.
Thank you, Alderman Mayor. My name is Travis Heaps, and I reside on 13th Street in Yucaipa. There has been a lot of talk circulating, both in this chamber and on social media, regarding Orange County developers trying to take over Yucaipa. And I felt it necessary to state this as a falsehood. Just because you own a piece of land that you intend to develop, it does not make you a bad, evil, or greedy person. A perfect example is Mr. Ivano Stamenia, who is the owner of Nova Homes. Mr. Semenya is a kind and generous man who puts God, family, and community above all else. Back when I was in 6th grade, when I was attending Ridgeview Elementary, there was this science field trip to Florida that we were all excited to go on. However, it was a very expensive trip, so students that wanted to go had to fundraise by selling gift cards in order to sponsor their trip. It became apparent that of the 13 kids working to go on the trip, hardly any of them would be able to afford it. So hearing this, Mr. Semenya offered an essay competition where the top 3 essays would have their trip completely funded. But after reading through each of the essays, Mr. Semenya was torn because each essay pulled a different string in his heart. After praying on it and talking over with his family, Mr. Semenya decided to sponsor all 13 of the students to go on that trip to Florida. Another example is when I was 14 and I played travel baseball. We had a World Series tournament in Colorado, but the cost was tremendous. All the kids were able to attend, but a large portion of the parents couldn't afford the trip. So hearing this, Mr. Semenya paid for all the tournament fees and all the housing costs so that each family had an opportunity to cheer on their son in the World Series tournament. And we were ranked number 9 in the nation at that point, so it was exciting for us. Taiwan Walker was on the team. Matt Davidson was even on that trip, and both of those gentlemen are in the major leagues today. The point being that Mr. Semenya didn't do these things to look good or to get anything out of it. Mr. Semenya sponsored all those kids and families because he saw an opportunity to bring joy to some of these people's lives, and because that is the man that he is. So while Mr. Semenya may not live in Yucaipa, Mr. Semenya is very much rooted in Yucaipa through the various lives that he has touched and helped along the way. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Brandy Hickman, followed by Mr. Craig Heaps.
Hi. My little brother makes this look easy. My name is Brandy Hickman. I live in Yucaipa on 13th Street, and I've been a resident for 30 years. Mayor Beaver, council members, I fully agree that volunteer work and giving back to the community is very important. That's why I'm hoping that I can provide not just the council, but the residents as well with some information about an out-of-town developer that hopefully will change their perspective. I've known Ivano with Nova Homes since 2002. When I was in my junior year at Yucaipa High School in 2005, Ivano was working on a project called Iris Gardens here in Yucaipa. It's located just around the corner between Atlas Storage and 7th Street Park. During that period, my little brother was in 6th grade at Ridgeview Elementary. His class was trying to put together a trip to Florida through a company called World Strides. This trip was to be part of their Science in Motion project. The students were able to go to the Kennedy Space Center, Epcot, and as a bonus, Disney World. It was tough because the cost of the trip was about $1,600 per student. Most families couldn't afford this, and without more kids signing up, the trip would be canceled. Ivano offered to pay for one student to take the trip, but after speaking with the class teacher, it was decided that he would pay 50% of the top 3 students to increase attendance. Each student was required to write an essay, and Ivano would pick 3 winners out of the 13 applicants. They held a special assembly with 13 students and their families to announce the winners. Because of the difficulty of picking 3 winners from all the compelling stories, mixed with Ivano's huge heart, all 13 students were called onto stage, and they were all given a 50% donation toward all their trips. All 13 kids were able to go to the trip, and that was made possible by Ivano's $10,000 donation towards Yucaipa youth. This article can also be found on Yucaipa News Mirror from March 16th, 2005. This is a case where an out-of-town developer has taken pride in our community, and I think that's important. I think that when people bring business to our town as well, they're active in it, and I think that this is a good example. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Craig Heaps, your address, please, followed by Mrs. Sharon Heaps.
Craig Heaps, 543 West County Line Road in Calamasa. I've been developing projects in Yucaipa for about 20 years. During that time, I've had challenging projects, but never had to deal with the attacks, lies, deception, and abuse that we've dealt with over the last 3 to 4 months. It's unbelievable. The same group repeatedly comes forth with personal attacks and lies. I know this city well enough that it supports free speech and open participation in the democratic process, but certain residents have overstepped these bounds. I have not lashed back against personal attacks and the spread of false information. I won't even stand here and mention names or insinuation who's at fault. You know some of the names. What I'll tell you is that before anyone attacks me or my family again, be careful that you know what you are talking about. Just because someone says it does not speak it into existence. I would encourage everyone, before you repeat someone else's stated facts, that you would look into allegations. Don't carry on someone else's lies. Mayor Beaver, I watched your interview on the North Bench that the residents were so happy to put on YouTube. You were lied to that day, and I'm positive you didn't investigate it to see if it was true, any of it. I would have expected more in that instance. I even mailed you the information for your verification. You said in the very beginning, before you met with the North Bench, you would meet with both sides to get both sides of the information. I deserve the same audience with you that they did, and I'm available at your convenience. For the record, I respect all 5 of you. In any state, there are legal consequences for slander or publicly spreading false information. Every accusation is proven unfounded, every FPPC complaint denied, and almost everything I read is false. You cannot build a recall, much less 3, on misinformation. You'll be wasting everyone's money. Those residents that donate to this cause will expect results. If these things move forward, then the truth will come out. In the meantime, those against the Toronto Estates project should speak to the merits of the project. I get it. They don't want it or like it. But don't speak against me, my family, any members of city staff, planning commission members, or any members of the city council. This may be personal to many, but not to me. This is business. I'm doing my job, and I'll continue to do my job. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Sharon Heaps.
Are you guys doing video yet or not?
It's very close to
I'm
being
having a
live.
good hair day, just saying. Just thought I'd throw it out there. Okay, so 543 West County Line Road, Calamasa. Mayor, council members. As a 30-year-old member of Yucaipa, I have to say that I'm very disturbed listening to some of the members of the community and witnessing many of the actions. My husband operates a small business currently located in Calamasa that you know as Premium Land Development. The business provides income for us, my son, my daughter, and the several other employees of the company. We have been attacked by some members of the community for no reason, and I cannot figure out the reason for personal attacks. Business should be seen as business. There are lawyers here that represent their clients, whether guilty or innocent, or regardless of their personal beliefs. We have doctors that care for their patients through all kinds of circumstances and illnesses. Realtors and brokers who assist both buyers and sellers alike. Every service has a situation where they assist their customers to the best of their ability. My family and our company do the same thing. We just happen to be in the land and town with business, and 95% of our business is helping others to develop their property. We are not greedy Orange County developers. We are local business with roots in the community. We have been developing here for almost 20 years, and in our 20 years, we have accomplished a lot. We've brought real value to the community. And even if you don't trust developers, we have done nothing to merit distrust. I have heard lies, gossips, and made up stories that involve my family and others. Those have told these lies should be ashamed of themselves. They should stick to the facts, especially when addressing the council, city manager, city attorneys. Nobody, and I mean nobody, deserves to be slandered, lied about, and have their reputation attacked. My husband has even received disturbing and threatening texts during these public hearings. So, thank you for your service. And you have a lot of people out there that are praying for each one of you guys. It's hard to be there and listening to some of the people, but thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to consent agenda. Is there any council member who wishes to have an item removed from consent? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 5-0. Mayor and council member business reports. Is there any council member that has any business to report?
I do.
Sir?
I want to give a shout out to our Youth Advisory Committee, our Healthy Yucaipa, our Open Trails, Open Spaces. We got a lot of good things going on, so I urge everybody to join these meetings, participate, and even join them as far as, sitting on the board stuff. We have our mountain bike. Redlands has their bike race, and we're getting our mountain bike race in motion. And so it's very exciting. I hope that people participate in getting this thing rolling. We have a pump track, I think, that we're trying to get moving. So there's a lot of exciting things to get the community involved with everything and stuff. And I really appreciate everybody out there.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Pro Tem Duncan.
So I have attended now 3 meetings at Omnitrans, and I've attended 3 meetings at the SBCTA board. Omnitrans is in the process of evaluating the number of riders that they have. Pre-pandemic, they were at 100%, and they had to go way down. The plan this year is to bring that ridership up, and they're investing in more routes and more buses, clean energy buses, and I think we'll see an improved service on that front. And the SBCTA board meeting, they're approving a lot of projects, but our interchange project has not been part of the discussion yet. But my goal is to get that in front of them as soon as I lobby enough people to support me.
So going to the Omnitrans real quick, I did have a meeting with our city manager and Sheriff Dykus of the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. There's been a lot of people who are concerned about the possibility that Omnitrans brings people to our city that may, bring crime elements with them. And should that fall on the burden of the city of Yucaipa to, deal with an influx of potential criminals? The sheriff shares my sentiment. In fact, he did discuss that he's with the new railroad, the new passenger rail in Redlands, and a lot more public transit in the county than there has been in previous years, looking at possible transit law enforcement services that can help alleviate some of the enforcement burden on our Yucaipa deputies. So that is on the heels of Mayor Pro Tem Duncan's report from Omnitrans. I wanted to share that as well because I think that's good news. The city of Yucaipa shouldn't be burdened with additional crime reduction efforts when this public transit was created by county level and private entities. So thank you. Those are good reports. We're going to move on to more good reports with the department reports. The first one, item number 8, Philip White, fiscal year 2022-23 mid-year general fund update.
Evening, Mayor, members of City Council. Item number 8 is the mid-year budget update. You do have a report in your packet. I do have a presentation as well to kind of walk through this. All right, so we're going to be doing 4 things here. The objective of this report, well, the focus of it is the general fund. So we're not talking about all the funds of the city. We're focusing strictly on the general fund. That's important to note as we go through it. So all the numbers that you hear, strictly general fund. We're going to be reviewing the original adopted budget that you adopted back in June of 22. We're going to be revisiting the adjustments to date, all the adjustments that have happened up to tonight. We're going to be reviewing the items that are brought before you as part of the mid-year budget, adjustments in 3 different departments. And then finally, we're going to provide kind of a preview of what we're anticipating in the 4th quarter. So kicking it off, and I'll try not to bore you with a lot of spreadsheets, but the first column on the left, this is the original budget from June of 2022. About halfway down, you'll see the total inflows for the general fund of 36 million, and down towards the bottom, 36 million of outflows from the general fund. So this is what was adopted by the body in June of 22. We had a rounding difference of $1 at the bottom there. Way over to the right, we have mid-year budget as amended. In your packet, you'll have an item called annual budget. These numbers reflect those. That reflects all of the adjustments posted or authorized to date. All the adjustments authorized, that represents the number that's in our accounting system. So the number on the right, if you were to query budget in our accounting system, you'd get those numbers over to the right. That center column reflects all authorized adjustments from the approved budget till now. Those authorized budget adjustments include 3 groups of things. First one is council approved, items that over the course of the meetings we'll bring to you and say we need a budget adjustment for this, we need a budget adjustment for that, and you'll approve those. To the extent that those are approved, we'll go back and post those into our system. The second item, our budget policy allows for what we call signature authority, transfers between divisions, things like that, that we don't, our budget policy doesn't require that we come back before you to approve those, but those would get posted in our system as well. The third is what we call technical adjustments. And the idea with the technical adjustments is that from time to time, there's a minor interpretation that's necessary from an item that you've received and approved, and how that gets posted into our system. It's not crystal clear on what was approved, gets posted into our system. One such item deals with an item that was in the 23 budget, deals with payroll, and there was a number that was included in the budget but not broken out by division. So what we did originally was slammed it all into one spot, but as we worked through the process of untangling that and posting that into the exact correct spot, it takes a process. So we are halfway through that process, but you'll see with some of these numbers, as an example, the number down there at the bottom, the 2.5 million difference, a significant portion of that number is because we're halfway through updating that one technical adjustment. All right. So these previously authorized adjustments. This whole column over here is just a summary of the previous page. These are all reported in thousands. So that's that $2.5 million number that I just talked about. Over here on the right, this is the detail of all of the, or the significant components of what that $2.5 million is. There's a lot more adjustments that have been brought before you, technical adjustments, signature adjustments that have been posted in the system. But if you were interested in, hey, what's that $2.5 million? This is the primary components of that. Again, reported in thousands. And so the first item deals with what I was just talking about, that technical adjustment that we're halfway through. So it has to do with a payroll item that was on the 23 adopted budget. It's $1 million reduction in salaries from a budgetary perspective, as we're trying to untangle exactly which divisions that gets posted to. We're halfway through that process, the bad half. So it looks like we've added 1.8 million to the budget when actually you just see the bad half. The cleanup of it is all going to happen in Q4. And so that's going to go away. That's a washout of the 2.5. So we're left with about $700,000. The $700,000 deals with Primarily, there's these three adjustments from the fire fund. Used paramedic gear and a truck that was authorized, an additional truck that was authorized for $56,000, and then the city recently joined Confire as the JPA. There was a fee of $41,000. The total related to that was $272,000. Then throughout the year so far, there's been several reorganizations. One is with the city manager department. That was an $81,000 adjustment. Community services had a $311,000 adjustment. And then there was an item called minor reorganization that hit various departments throughout, and that was a total of $38,000. Total of the reorganizations is $430,000. So if you add those three categories up, we've accounted for $2.5 million of the $2.5 million. So we have a rounding difference. Again, there's other significant items that are that have been posted, but to not bore you with too much detail, that's the significant components of what's going on. All right, so that gets us to where we are today, the annual budget in your packet. This middle column, okay. Just learning the clicker, bear with me. This is just a recap of what the far right column was previously. This middle column, adjustments requested at mid-year, those are the items in your packet that are, we are requesting authorization from a budget standpoint for. There's three departments, city manager, general services, and finance that are requesting adjustments as part of mid-year. And then over there on the right would reflect the budget assuming approval was made on those three items. This slide details out what those three departments are requesting as far as budget adjustments. Some of these items, most of these items are items that were not anticipated when the original budget was adopted, but based on facts and circumstances, a budget adjustment is necessary at this point. First one deals with the city manager department. Each of these items roll into salaries and benefits. The first item is related to the retired city manager payout of leave accruals and retirement. When somebody separates from the city, the value associated with their leave accrual is not a budgeted item. It's not anticipated from a budgetary standpoint. So to the extent that any employee that separates from the city and that those accrued payouts are made, that all impacts the budget, but it's not a budgeted item. So we're coming back asking for the budget adjustment for the budget to reflect those payouts. The second item deals with acting pay for the assistant city manager during that transition period. And then the third item in the city manager department is there's a resolution attached as part of this item, and it's a rearranging of a position, of a current position. The next department is the general services department. There's two items here, one in salaries and benefits, one in the capital roll-up code. But the item dealing with salaries and benefits is information technology was understaffed, and we're utilizing a temporary employee on a full-time basis and eating up that budget quickly. We're anticipating doing the same thing throughout the fiscal year, so we're asking for a $20,000 budget adjustment to cover that salary. The second item, as we were going through this process, there was access control equipment at the police department facility that was identified that was in need of an update. And so we're asking for a budget adjustment for the capital related to that at $30,000. A total of $50,000 for the general services department. The finance department has three items. When the director of when I came on board in November, there was an overlap with the preceding director of finance, a 2-month overlap. That was never addressed in the budget, so we're asking for an adjustment for that. We also have an accounting assistant that we split with the fire department. The fire department's piece was addressed in the budget. Our 50% split was not, so we're asking for the budget adjustment for that as well. That's a current employee. And then we have a $5,000 request for training and conferences associated with the finance department. So the total mid-year adjustments that are being requested from a budgetary standpoint are $387,000. All right. Next slide. This is the budget to actual comparison, and this is a copy of what you have in your packet. First column is the annual budget. We talked about that. The second column, it says through January. So all we did was take a percentage of what that annual budget is through January and chopped it off to that point to say, here's where we should be through January. From a revenue standpoint, we have the actuals through January 31st by category, and then a difference between the two. So starting at the top, property taxes, it looks like we have brackets around it at 576. The way property taxes work, we get 2 significant payments. We haven't gotten the second payment yet, so we're actually tracking the revenue, even though we haven't gotten the second payment yet, so it looks like we're short, but in actuality, we're tracking property tax as well. Same with sales and use tax. There's a timing difference. We get a monthly, but 2 to 3 months in arrears, so it looks like we're under, but we're actually tracking right at budget for that one. Similar with franchise fees, we get 2 significant ones at year end, so we're actually a little bit, we're anticipating being a little over budget on that one. Under other revenues, it includes licenses and permits, which are significantly over anticipated budget, so we're doing well there. And then the transfers in will occur at year end, and we are tracking there as well. Flipping over to the expenditure side, these same idea, but through February actuals, we have another month of information from on the expenditure side. All of these do not include, from a budget standpoint, they do not include the items that are on the list for tonight. So these are without those items. You can see the differences. Up at the top, city manager has brackets around it. One of the items on the agenda tonight would clean that item up. Everything else is tracking the way the police services work. We are tracking budget. It just looks like we're over at this point, but by the time we get to year end, that'll be cleaned up right at the budgeted amount. And again, the transfers will occur at year end, and so we're tracking there. From an expenditure standpoint, following the items that are on the list for tonight, we're anticipating being not having any overages in any of the departments or divisions as we progress through the end of the fiscal year. If we were really good at this point and said our estimates, our budget estimates, come in exactly where actuals end up, we would have a $1 million use of accumulated resources in the general fund. What that's saying is our equity in the general fund from where we started the year to where we ended the year, we would use up $1 million of that accumulated equity based on where our budgets will end, assuming approval tonight. I can tell you from, as we were going through budget to actuals, the revenues are tracking. We're going to hit revenues. In years past, we've blown by the revenues, but now we've adjusted our estimates upward, and so we're going to hit them. We might be a little bit over, but not significantly over. From the expenditure side, we're going to be high. We're going to come in slightly under them. So I believe that we're going to do much better than that $1 million deficit, but based on our budget, where our budgets end up, that's what we're targeting right there. You might wonder where you would see that $1 million use of resources. So I put this slide together. We'll start on the right, the income statement classification right there. These are June 30th, 22. These are our audited financial statements from last year. So right here, this net change in fund balance last year in the general fund was a $1.4 million number. This year, that would be the $1 million projected. All right, and I think we're going to do better than that, but that's where you would see it, general fund income statement, that net change. The use of those resources, well, staying over here, that bottom number, that's ending equity in the general fund last year, so 50 million or almost 51 million. As that gets eaten up, if we had a $1 million shortfall this year, over here on the left, this is the classification of that equity. So the two spots that it would primarily hit would be this, the fire protection bucket, which currently has $9.3 million in it, and this unassigned category, which currently has $10.7 million. So the most of the $1 million reduction would be in those two buckets. These other ones would stay intact. This one changes with the interfund loans. Those two buckets would be where you would see most of the change. Assuming there are no questions, that does conclude my presentation. We are recommending 4 things. One is just to review the budget report. One is to approve the mid-year budget adjustments totaling $387,000. One is adopting the salary resolution that's an attachment to your packet. And also, as part of the police department facility equipment updates, there is a procurement item included in this attachment, and we're asking you to approve the procurement of that item as well.
Thank you, Mr. White. Great presentation. Are there questions of our finance director?
Yeah, when are we going to start paying back our general fund?
From the DIF loans, from the interfund loans?
Yeah.
We have started. We have started. Based on the formal loan agreements that we have in place, that outlines which funding we use to repay those loans. It's an ongoing process. From my viewpoint, it's a very slow process, but we have started the process, and to the extent that DIF loans are received, the more that are received, the quicker that repayment will occur.
Okay. But we are started, right?
We are absolutely started, and a few years, maybe last year or the year prior, this body made the determination that there will be no future loaning of those general fund monies, and so it's capped, and we are repaying at the same time.
Any further questions?
Yeah, I got a couple. The other revenues, what's the definition of that? And why are we so over on that?
Yeah. Here we go. So the definition of other in this instance is anything that's not property taxes, sales taxes, or franchise fees. It's everything else lumped together. So the city has a bunch of different categories of revenues that aren't significant enough to, property taxes and sales taxes are kind of our big two. Franchise fees would be the next biggest one, but everything else kind of got lumped together in other revenues. The reason that it's over so much is because of licenses and permits, which have...
Are we overcharging?
No, there's a lot of activity that's occurring, and so from a licenses and permitting revenue, a lot of volume that is generating additional income. So we are over the budgeted amount in that category, which is pushing the whole other revenue. Some of the other revenues are over, some are a little under, but the significant overage is in licensing and permits.
Okay. And then what is it, $9 million for the fire?
Yeah.
Where'd that come from?
Well, going back to when the city incorporated, the city made the determination, if I can find it here. The city, upon incorporation, the city council at that point in time committed a revenue stream to fire. And so as property taxes were increased for fire coming, joining with the city back in 1989, I believe. At that point in time, they took a calculation to say how much more property taxes are we getting for fire. At that point, I want to say the number was close to 35%. It wasn't exactly 35, but it was close to 35%. So this body committed that funding stream. 35% of property taxes goes to fire services. And so over the course of time, that grew and grew and grew, and then it accumulated. Recently, the annual costs of fire have started being more than that 35% of annual property taxes. But the 9.3 is the accumulated balance since 1989, 1990, minus, so all the property taxes going in minus all the costs of fire has, as of June 30th, 22, is $9.3 million.
So that money was going in there, we were never using it, or we were pulling from that?
No, that's where the city funds its fire services
gotcha,
from.
okay.
Yeah. So that it's included in the general fund, but internally, we're tracking that as a totally separate fund. But whenever you see financial reports, it gets merged in. The city does have the option to pull it out and report it all on its own, if it so chooses.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions?
No.
We do have a public speaker, Dr. Hanson Wong. If you could please come to the podium and state your address.
I apologize for not doing it before. I felt like I caused so much problems for you guys that you would know who I am. So I'm Hanson Wong. I live at 35150 Court Street in Yucaipa, and that's what you want to know, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So looking at our budget, and this is the mid-year because we go from summer to summer, as I understand. And it looks like, you know, we have some variances. There are some things that we didn't plan for in the change of our city hall, the manager, and so on. So there are variances that we didn't account for last summer that we added on from this January. And so it looks like our finance people are doing a good job getting it close, and we're repaying some of the general fund and so on. Just a couple of things I want to bring up. The impression that some of our planning commission people got was that the sky is falling. And in that sense, they brought up at the meeting, if we don't pass this plan and get something going here, we're going to fall apart. Therefore, because of our budget, we need to pass this plan the way it is right now. Okay, I feel like that was a misinterpretation of our budget, but it could be true. The second thing that I want to mention on our budget has to do with the addition of positions. I thought, again, and my wife brought it up already, so I'm not going to belabor it, but I thought we were going to look to see, you know, the needs of it before we go into it, but somehow it already went through. But I feel that in the future, if we add additional positions, we need to really look at the need and the qualifications and how we're going to hire the people and so on. The last item I want to bring up is the impact on future budgets. If you look at Mr. Mann's contract, it adds certain things depending on when he leaves, how long he's going to stay. He sounds like he's going to actively participate with our city for quite a while. So I think we need an actuary and your budget people to look at the things, the benefits and things that you have added on in the contract that will go into the future. Usually during a time of poor economics, the contracts are not so lush, but I think with his contract, any employee would just have loved to have the different things that he added to it. Please look at it, put it in your mind as how much it's going to cost the city residents and taxpayers in the next 10, 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, no other public speakers for this item. So, Madam City Clerk, did you receive any other public speakers for this item? I saw people come. Okay. Okay. We have the report in front of us. We have, looks like there's 4 options.
I have a quick question for
Go ahead.
the city attorney. So I sat here and listened to all this, Mr. Attorney, and there's this one section dealing with the police department. Do I need to recuse myself due to my course of employment? I don't think it affects the contract, so I'm thinking no, but I might be wrong.
Right, so I believe this is for access control. It's a city responsibility. It's not money going to the sheriff's department. So my advice would be you're not required to disqualify yourself. You are, of course, free to
Just wanted to-
voluntarily recuse yourself if you'd like. I don't think you are required to.
Wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve item number 8 with the 4 recommendations?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Is there a motion, or I'm sorry, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries 5-0. Moving on to item number 9. This is going to be introduction and first reading of ordinance number 422 by City Attorney Stephen Graham.
Okay, I believe the introduction for this item was actually going to be done by our Assistant City Manager.
I'll take it. It's a
Apologize
lovely
for
item.
the incorrect note.
Go ahead, ma'am, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you know, due to ongoing items or issues finding, filling, and maintaining the 5-member Mobile Home Rent Review Commission candidates that can understand the complexity required for the ordinance and rules as it pertains to special rent adjustment applications, staff approached you on March 13th to have you consider the opportunity to introduce a hearing officer in place of the commission. Based on your direction, you directed staff to issue an RFP for the hearing officer services in place of the commission, and we would then eliminate the city council as part of the appeal process. Upon adoption of this ordinance at the second reading, it come into effect on the 31st day following the adoption. We will return to you at a future meeting with the administrative rules. It's much more complex, but as of right now, the ordinance will put this ball in motion, and if we have a case an application that's deemed complete on or after April 6th, it would go before the hearing officer. The recommendation is that City Council waive full reading and introduction by title only of ordinance number 422, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Yucaipa, California, amending sections 1520.050, 1520.070, 1520.085, 1520.090, 1520.100, 1520.105, 1520.110, 1520.115, 1520.116, 1520.120, and 1520.130 of Chapter 15.20 of Title 15 of the Yucaipa Municipal Code related to the Mobile Home Park Rent Stabilization Program pertaining to the implementation of a hearing officer and the elimination of the appeal process. That's all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
That was impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm glad you did that instead of me. Okay. Are there any questions of city staff?
I'll move approval.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second? Oh, wait. I have public speakers. I apologize. My notes caught me. The first public speaker is Mr. Jeff Krydell. If you could please come forward and state your address to the podium.
All right, Jeff Crydell, 12357 Ross Place, Apartment B here in Yucaipa. Good evening. I was here back on December 12th of last year when 2 of you were sworn in, Councilman Venable and Councilman Garner. I was particularly interested in the appointments, how those would go at the various committees, and was surprised to see that some committees had many applications and some were a bit short on applications that would allow them to reach full membership. The Planning Commission had 21 applications, Trails and Open Space had 13, Parks and Rec had 8, Healthy Yucaipa and Public Arts each had 4 volunteers wishing to be selected. The Mobile Home Committee had just 1 applicant. I believe his name was William Reagan. If I recall, this didn't surprise me since as far back as I can remember, 2010, 2011, this has always been a problem to staff this committee. And it's kind of strange because we have over 4,500 mobile home units and about 58,000 overall citizens, and we had 1 interested party. It's no wonder that you, as the city council members, have decided to implement the use of a mobile home hearing officer. in place of the committee when no such committee exists, especially when insufficient interested applicants. We are the 7th highest number of mobile home units through over 500 cities in California. We could only come up with one interested applicant. So unless Mr. Reagan's here today, that would mean nobody in this room cared to get involved. While you, Councilman Duncan, have been given 100% credit for creating a mobile home czar. Obviously, that sounds so devious. I am sure this was a decision made by a quorum, if not all of this council. I support this item. I thank you for taking care of the mobile home residents, a task that the citizens of Yucaipa have obviously overlooked. To report to the mobile home park residents or on Save Yucaipa that this is all a mastermind of Councilman Duncan is careless, irresponsible, and should be corrected immediately. As Yucaipa residents, each mobile home tenant can rest assured that
Thank
they
you,
are
sir.
being looked out for by this council.
Thank you, sir. Your time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker, Ms. Julie Pauley. Did I do that right this time? Ha! Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Julie Pauley with the WMA, and I'm just here tonight to restate our support of this very good amendment to your ordinance. But I had two questions. One I failed to ask last time, so perhaps either staff or you could ask it on my behalf of staff. I don't understand the April 6th date that applications received on or after April 6th. I don't understand why applications 30 days after second reading. So that seems arbitrary, so I'm sure there's an explanation. And then the second one was, why a retainer? And my concern is that the park owners and the residents have to shoulder all the costs associated with this ordinance. So why wouldn't you just hire a officer to hear a hearing when you have an application that's deemed complete? I guess my question is, are you going to be paying for someone to be like on deck? Because that's not my experience with other jurisdictions, how they handle it. So that would be, I think, just as expensive. So thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. City Attorney, can we answer?
Yeah, I'll start with the second question. I wasn't sure where the question regarding paying via retainer came from. It would be an hourly rate, I think is the RFP that we put out for hearing officers. So I think it's an hourly rate for the hearings. And as to the first question, April 6th was the day we posted the agenda. It's very common when you are changing the rules of procedure for an appeal process that all appeals made after that law becomes known and published. We don't want to rush to City Hall of a bunch of appeals before the Mobile Home Rent Commission, which we're currently in the process of eliminating. So the point of that was the day it was published. It's very common to make the rules be applicable to when that change first becomes noticed. And again, the goal is to get these before the hearing officer, not to have a couple of straggler hearings that we have to have before the Rent Commission. My understanding is right now, we have no appeals pending that are deemed complete. Darn it, we have one. But not appealed yet. So I think we'll be able to send these to the hearing officer. But that's mostly so that, this body that is being eliminated, we're not bringing things to them.
Understood. Thank you for the speakers. Now we can move on to, is there a motion to approve?
I made the motion to approve.
Oh, I apologize. That's right. We do have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilman Thorpe. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the the item passes 5-0. Okay, moving on to item number 10. This is introduction and first reading of ordinance number 423, presented by Mr. Ben Matlock.
All right, thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. I'll keep my presentation pretty brief.
the city's massage therapy ordinance, we actually have kind of two different ordinances. One is for CAMTC certified therapists, and then we have one that's if they go through our certification process. It's always been kind of very similar ordinances. A lot of the provisions are parallel, but it was the city initially had kind of our own approach. Then when CAMTC kind of came online, we had a second ordinance developed, and really one of them is redundant, and it kind of confuses most applicants by having kind of the dual process established. So this is a cleanup item to consolidate everything into one specific section, but then also to address kind of updated laws and requirements to make sure that our ordinance is easily enforceable for massage therapy establishments and personnel. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. There may be some additional follow-up things that the planning division will work through separately to further refine this, but this at least makes sure that it's all correct and moving forward, that it's clear and concise for applicants.
Related but different, we do, this is a question, does our code enforcement do inspections of massage parlor operations to ensure that they're in compliance with both our ordinance and the CAMTC ordinance?
That is correct. So code enforcement as well as planning staff both follow inspections, and then there's been other occasions where a law enforcement agency will be conducting an inspection and usually request us to follow through to tag any municipal code violations with those inspections too.
Thank you. Okay, is there any questions of city staff? Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move.
We have a
I'll
motion.
second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries 5-0. The next item, item number 11, introduction and first reading of ordinance number 424 by Mr. Chris Mann.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The item before you, ordinance number 424, would amend chapter 12.06 related to obstruction, camping, and aggressive solicitation on public property. These are, the idea is to target nuisance behaviors that are often associated with homelessness, which we've seen an increase in this city over the past few years. This ordinance would provide a little bit more teeth in our enforcement capabilities. I'd like to have the city attorney take it from here.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Mayor, Council, the city had not updated its ordinances related to camping, storage of personal property in, I think, about 8 years. There's been some pretty significant changes in constitutional law in that time period. And so we are bringing these ordinances up into compliance. For those law enforcement on the dais, I'm sure you're familiar with the Martin v. Boise decision regarding the city's ability to enforce on camping laws when there's insufficient shelter. Same thing for storage of personal property. So essentially what we want to do was bring this up to best practices so that city staff and the sheriff's department have a valid constitutional and enforceable ordinance so that if and when we do have individuals who are engaging in nuisance behavior on public property, that we have a valid ordinance that we can cite to, because otherwise, essentially, there's not much that can be done. So this is just another cleanup thing. We're going through this municipal code. I think this was the last of the priority items, Mayor, that we were given to draft and bring up. Having a great time updating the municipal code. I'm sure we will find more as time goes on. But if you have any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Yeah, for altogether too long, Yucaipa has been that quiet place off in the distance that nobody really came to, and now we're finding ourselves scrambling to have laws that will appropriately protect our residents and the people who live here. I see this as us handing off another tool for y'all to put in your toolbox for your boys and girls over there in Tana Green. So if this passes, hopefully we can, have a letter of the law enforcement here very soon of this ordinance. So, are there any questions of staff? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
I'll motion.
I'll second. We have a first and a second. Are there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries 5-0. Moving on to item number 12. This is going to be by Mr. Chris Mann, discussion and possible adoption of 2023 city council goals.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So this will be an annual practice we'll go through, and the purpose of the City Council's annual goal setting is to clearly identify and adopt a list of agreed-upon priorities for the year. Once adopted, these goals will help guide the council and staff to ensure that time and other resources are allocated in a manner consistent with the council's shared objectives for the city. This process does not result in a comprehensive list of specific projects. That level of detail will be contained in the draft budget for fiscal year 2023-24, but rather a set of broad goals. It is also helpful to note the difference between goals and objectives. A goal is an achievable outcome that is generally broad and longer term, while an objective is shorter term and defines measurable actions to achieve an overall goal. Setting goals for the organization is a responsibility of the City Council, while achieving those goals through the establishment and execution of specific objectives is more appropriately the role of the city manager and staff. Moving forward, staff will schedule goal-setting meetings closer to the beginning of each calendar year. A matrix reviewing the status of the council's current goals will be presented at each subsequent goal-setting meeting as a way to track and measure progress. Based on input from council members and staff, this report identifies several proposed goals for consideration. In no order of priority, 11 potential goals for the remainder of 2023 are suggested for discussion and possible adoption. Before we jump into the individual proposed goals, I think it's helpful to remind ourselves of the vision that we're after here. And this is taken from the city's general plan. And it reads, Yucaipa is the jewel of the Inland Empire. Framed by the San Bernardino Mountains, Yucaipa's natural environment with its cleaner air and unique topography distinguishes its exceptional quality of life. Yucaipa offers an attractive, peaceful, and safe community for all of its residents. Yucaipa is thoughtfully planned, balancing the needs of residents, the environment, and the business community. Quality public facilities, schools, community services, and other amenities draw residents and visitors of all ages to live, work, play, and retire in Yucaipa. So with that vision in mind, let's go down the list of proposed goals. So number one, it has become very clear to me that the number one goal of this city council is public safety. And we have a lot of needs in that area. On the fire side, call volume and response times have both been increasing. We have a need to retire a reserve engine that has an awful lot of miles on it and has outlived its useful life. Our current frontline engine in that station is badly in need of being placed in reserve status. Again, it has outlived its useful life as a frontline engine and is over 10 years old, and we need to do that. We need to purchase a ladder truck, keeping in mind that the way of the world these days, from the time we order it to the time we receive it, it's probably going to be about 2 years, maybe even a little bit longer. We should staff a paramedic squad now to reduce response times. Our fire chief has a half-time person providing administrative assistant services, and that we really need to consider a full-time person for our fire chief. On the police side, calls for service, reports taken, and arrests were all up significantly in 2022 from 2021, as were calls per deputy, reports per deputy, and arrests per deputy. We're seeing an increase in DUI-related traffic collisions, and we're seeing an increase in illegal narcotics. We should look at increasing traffic enforcement. We should consider the addition of a dual-purpose tracking and narcotics police dog. And I understand there is a desire, and there have been discussions with the school district on adding a school resource officer position. When it comes to code enforcement, our code enforcement team is lacking training and equipment needed to do their current jobs effectively. In addition, we expect an expanded role for code enforcement as we get more aggressive with addressing homelessness and other crime issues. And so we're going to need to invest in personnel, training, and equipment for our code enforcement department. Number two, we need to create and implement a plan to more proactively address homelessness. Over the past several years, we've seen a dramatic increase in the number of homeless individuals roaming our streets. This has been impacting businesses and the public's enjoyment of areas such as our uptown. Residents have complained about being harassed at the ATM while walking into Walgreens or 7-Eleven, at gas stations, and property crimes have risen as a result of this increase in homelessness. We need to more aggressively tackle the criminal behavior that often comes with homelessness, substance abuse, and mental illness, which are often tied together. To do this, we will need to take a look at best practices, look at cities that have implemented programs and have had success reducing the number of homeless on their streets. We'll need to pick an approach and then aggressively implement it. Potential goal number 3. We should take a more inclusive and aggressive approach to road maintenance. As we look to revamp our pavement management plan in the coming months, we should seek public input and include the public on setting these priorities. Potholes have clearly been an issue and are a top priority. We've already gone out to RFP to utilize on-call services to more quickly fill potholes. We've also recently purchased a new machine and placed that into service, but we need more personnel. A lot of people don't realize that our streets division contains only 3 city staff members. For a city of 55,000 residents and 197 miles of public roads, it's not getting it done. We need to focus on road maintenance. Potential goal number 4. Focus on the completion and maintenance of current projects and facilities. So for a long time in the city, there has been a big focus on initiating new projects. And as a result, we have some really tremendous world-class facilities in this city. The city has a lot of parks. We have an amazing performing arts center, a great community center, equestrian arena. We have some really great facilities. However, perhaps not enough focus has been placed on maintaining our current facilities. Also, we need to focus on fully completing a project before we rush on to the next. So staff has indicated a need to focus this year on the completion and maintenance of current projects and facilities before initiating a lot of new ones. Potential goal number 5, establish a vehicle and equipment fleet maintenance program. Currently, there is no systematic approach to maintaining the city's vehicles and equipment. As an example, we have vehicles that have really never been taken in for routine maintenance. Very often vehicles, we wait until something goes wrong and then take them in. I think I'd mentioned in a previous meeting the example of generators at the police station that had not been tested in almost 10 years since they were put into service, and in fact even had the original gas that was put into them still sitting there. Here in City Hall, we have some desks that are literally falling apart. And even the carpet at City Hall has not been replaced since the building was completed in 2004. So we have a long list of deferred maintenance that now needs attention. And we need to take a more systematic approach to maintaining those facilities and equipment. Potential goal number 6, seek economic development while preserving Yucaipa's unique rural feel. So we are really blessed here in Yucaipa with tremendous opportunities for economic growth. Whether it be at the freeway corridor or in Uptown or any of the areas of our city, really. And economic development is critical. It's important because it allows us to provide the highest level of municipal services anywhere. Right? It provides residents with amenities, with additional and convenient places to live, work, shop, and play. But it also produces revenue for the city, which funds police and fire, road maintenance, parks, community events, all the services that the city provides to residents. The thing, though, is that we have really one shot to get it right. Once something is developed, it's there for a very long time, sometimes a generation or more. So we need to seek the right kinds of development for the benefits of the entire community. We need to grow in a measured and deliberate way, not haphazard, not blindly accepting every application that presents itself. We can and should seek economic development while also diligently preserving the things that make Yucaipa unique. Goal number 7, pursue revenue generation to offset costs of community services and development services. So this city has invested heavily in community services, both in terms of facilities and staff. We have incredible facilities, parks, community center, white pack, swimming pool, equestrian arena, etc. But in order to run those facilities, along with a growing number of phenomenal events, the city maintains a large community services department staff. To this point, generating revenue in order to offset these costs has not really been a priority. It seems that a lot of money has been left on the table in a number of ways. Example, with our festivals, right? Partnerships with other groups in the community are great, but these are city events, and we're basically giving away about 50% of the largest source of revenue generation for these events. We need to take a look at that. Similar with the rodeo, similar with the White Pack. Community services will never be at full cost recovery. That's really never the goal when you're providing services to the community. But we can and should reduce the financial burden on the taxpayers for providing these important services wherever we can. Similarly with development services, we should take a hard look at how we're collecting and handling fees for providing these services. Applicants should really be covering all of these costs. Otherwise, local taxpayers are footing the bill. Also, we should explore ways to make sure that future development is completely covering the costs of the services that will be required to accommodate the growth caused by development. Potential goal number 8, establish and execute a comprehensive communications plan. This is a requirement of the city's new Sunshine Ordinance, which recognizes the need for the city to improve the quality and the quantity of communications from City Hall to the public. The goal is to increase stakeholder engagement and community understanding of city services, initiatives, and resources. It'll also lead to increased responsiveness to concerns raised by residents in the community. This effort will be led by our PIO, and will engage the assistance of a communications firm to help with the development and the execution of the plan. Number 9, update city staffing levels to reflect current workload. For a long time, the culture at City Hall has been to do more with less. While we must act responsibly with public dollars, it is not in the public's interest for city staff to be spread so thin that public services suffer. While specific recommendations will be presented as part of the draft fiscal year 2023-2024 budget next month, some expected examples include filling the long vacant position of Director of Community Development, bring in a staff person focused on human resources who can also help with purchasing and risk management, adding public works positions, particularly in the streets division, adding a cashier position in the finance department, possible additional school resource officers and code enforcement officers, the a full-time admin assistant for our fire chief, which I mentioned previously. Potential goal number 10, review and update personnel rules and conduct classification and compensation studies. So as we talked about earlier, at the March 13th meeting, the council directed staff to move forward with a classification and compensation study. Best practices is for a class and comp study to be done about every 4 or 5 years. This city hasn't done one since 2011. So we'll include the budget for this in the draft fiscal year 2023-2024 budget that you will see next month. We'll have to go out to RFP for consultant. These studies could take up to about a year for a city of this size to complete. And any staffing adjustments that result from that study would be part of next fiscal, the 2024-2025 budget. We also need to take a hard look at our personnel rules and update our personnel rules. The city attorney and I have identified what we believe are some real liabilities for the city in the current version, so we just need to update that document. The city attorney was alluding to number 11 is to go through and do a more systematic update of our municipal code. I'm going to let the city attorney expand on this one.
The city has not undertaken, as far as I can tell, any comprehensive look at its municipal code, its development code in quite some time, if ever. You know, we get a lot of public comments about projects, right? Projects come forward based on the development code that this city has adopted and the rules that exist. When the rules haven't been looked at in years, sometimes decades, sometimes it's the projects that you're getting, if you're not happy with them, it might be because the framework that you have set up has not been kept up to date, not just with the laws that are changing in the state all the time, but also just with the direction of the city. I think that people in this city have an idea of what they want the city to look like, where they want the city to go. That needs to be reflected in these legal documents. As far as it relates to public nuisance activities, we have to have valid, enforceable, and constitutional ordinances if you want us out there enforcing the law. It's a pretty big undertaking. I do think that it will be worthwhile. And I think that as you are engaging in that process, if you adopt this goal, it will bring about a lot of those community discussions that I hear people wanting to have. But you'll be having it in the context of what are the rules of the road? What is the community we want to have, as opposed to this particular project, right? So I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. When we say municipal code, we're not just talking about, you know, the business license section and, you know, panhandling, things like that. We're also talking about the development code. And just the last thought I have on that one, for many, many years, I taught a class at the California Association of Local Economic Development, and it was called Using Your Planning Powers to Spur Economic Development. And what essentially it was explaining how, you know, you can have your development code and decide what kind of economic development you want, and you can create those pathways so that, like the city manager said, you don't just have random applications coming in left and right. People know what the city wants. They know what the people want, what the council's looking for. And by getting these codes up to date, you can do that. So this goal can actually support many of the other goals that you have in front of you as well.
So those are the 11 proposed goals that staff put together based on conversations with you, the members of the council, based on discussions we've had internally. We took our best stab at what we thought would be your priorities, but this would be an appropriate time to tell us how close we hit the mark. And we can certainly, this is a proposed list, so we can certainly make changes to it here this evening, and then adopt a final list.
Thank you, sir. Before we go on to questions of staff, we have a public speaker, Mrs. Donna Snodgrass. If you could please approach the podium and state your address. And she is seating. All right, no public speakers. Cool. I have a few questions as well, but we'll go questions of staff from the council first.
With these goals and objectives that we're looking at tonight, a couple of things. One, if there are items that the public is bringing forward they would like to see the city help fund or get behind in a project, is that something we're looking at this time, or that's going to be a different set of goals and objectives for funding projects?
If it's project specific, those will be brought as part of the budget process. So we'll see a draft budget the second meeting in May. And we can take feedback at that time on what is proposed in that document. We'll go back and we'll incorporate comments from the council at that time, and in June, we'll come back for adoption of the final budget to go into effect July 1st. But that level of detail will be included at that time.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Graham, I know I'm hypersensitive about this, but because of the outlined goals that we've had tonight, the first one being about public safety, because that could lead into any kind of contractual changes to the department at some point, possibly, do I need to recuse myself of voting on this item?
No, so we don't have a concrete action in front of us that will result in any financial interest. I do think that we'll probably want to have a specific conversation when it comes budget time. But no, I don't see any need to disqualify yourself off this item, sir.
Thank you, sir. That's all I've got.
Councilman Venable, questions of staff?
Is it something that I can come and see you and talk to you about? Because I got to wrap my head around a few things.
Absolutely.
So, okay, thank you.
So these are just goals. So moving
Correct.
forward, we're going to have more concrete, so.
Correct.
Mayor Pro Tem Duncan.
I agree with all 11 in the order that we have them before us. I think I approve of that for sure.
Councilman Gardner.
Yeah, same here. I think it's, I think you nailed it. I like the whole order. 1 to 2 is my favorite. And the rest of it's cherry on a cake. I like it.
I kind of want to dive into some of them a little bit more, recognizing this is goals, but I do want to clarify a few things. Firstly, the ladder truck has been discussed for the last 2 years that I've been on this council. And perhaps this is more for the chief, but have we reached the point where we need that ladder truck? Because we talked about it 2 years ago and we don't have it now, and we seem to be doing just fine. My question is, do we need a ladder truck? It has been indicated we do, but I'm gonna defer to our
Chief,
fire
would you like
chief
to take this
expert.
one?
Because like I said, this is not a new discussion. Fire apparatus, ladder truck, retired engines. It was mentioned earlier in public comment that this is new and sudden, but we've been discussing this for 2 years now, and so perhaps that speaker has some validity. Can we push this off another fiscal year or two?
So basically approving it going into next fiscal budget is still pushing it off for 2 years. So we're talking reflex time. So to meet that reflex time of 2 years and to keep our engine rotation on schedule, since we're so far behind now, yeah, we're at the point now to meet our infrastructure needs in process and in future process, we need to order the truck now, with bearing in mind that that won't be due for payment for, like you said, 2.5 years. So the reflex time is now, because come July 1, it's going to be years before we actually see it to fruition.
To your knowledge, are there any other CAL FIRE stations that are running antiquated equipment and getting away with it?
I'd have to get back to you.
Okay, is there any?
I only know our counterpart, and they're more, and like you said, compared to other cities, I think we can do better, and they're doing better than us, and they're staying within that kind of industry standard.
Okay. Is there any consequences that can be imposed on the city by CAL FIRE for failing to uphold adequate equipment for their firefighters to use?
You know, CAL FIRE is going to make the recommendations, but definitely for like civil liability, we can't, you know, in a city of 55,000 people running 9,000 calls a year, we can't be running equipment that's basically illegal in many states because it's out of NFPA compliance. We're not an NFPA compliant state, but it's really going to be hard to justify running a 22, 23-year-old fire engine in a city that's running that many calls a day, and then we get a pump failure on a fire, and it's like, why are you running something that should have been retired years ago? So it's going to be very hard to civilly justify why we would do that.
Okay. That's all I have for you, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you.
What is the cost of a fully burdened code enforcement officer? Can anybody tell me? Versus a fully burdened deputy sheriff?
I can answer the question related to a fully burdened code enforcement officer, and that's in 132 to 142,000 a year.
Okay, and I think I can speak educatedly on a deputy sheriff of roughly $250,000. So if we find ways to invest in public safety, still supporting our sheriff's department, giving them the resources, adding deputies, SROs, but also finding other ways that we can take that low-hanging fruit and having our code enforcement officers be trained, I think we're hitting the mark pretty close. So I appreciate you referencing code enforcement as part of our public safety model. I think it's important that we, look at public safety from a whole and not just, well, it's police and fire. When the city of Yucaipa, while we contract with two phenomenal agencies, we have some obligation to provide public safety as well from a code enforcement standpoint. Mr. City Manager, you indicated relative to finishing projects, you said something that stuck with me. I want to clarify. You said staff indicated we need to finish projects before starting new ones. When you said staff, are you speaking of yourself, sir, or are you referencing our city staff that existed prior to your appointment?
The latter, sir.
Okay, so this was brought to your attention by city employees?
Correct.
Okay. We do have quite a few city projects that I can think of off the top of my head that have not been completed yet. I think Five Winds Ranch is an example of one that has not been completed just yet. There was another one I was going to speak of. City Yard has been completed and has started, not been completed yet. And I feel like the equestrian arena is ever growing and seeking expansion. So I do agree that we need to simplify, maybe take a step back and get back to the basics of our city government instead of expanding. Take a step back, pause, reassess, fix what we have. I'm glad to see that the sheriff's department was painted recently. That was the paint chipping off the side of the siding was bugging me, so I'm glad that was happened. As it relates to personnel, I would like to see, as you expand on these goals, there are several cities that I know of that have a personnel board. So as we start to work with the people in this room, the citizens who guide our decisions, I'd like to see them involved in the conversation as well. By looking into, let's study what a personnel board does in other cities and how that can benefit us so that we don't have the surprise additions to our personnel at City Hall. I'd like to see that be examined. If not implemented, certainly examined to see if it's something that is working in other places. But anything we can do to increase communication between us and the people who, let's be real, foot the bill is important. On that note, we previously, I think, took a step back from the Economic Development Advisory Committee to reassess its value and get them focused again on the task. Our city attorney referenced economic development and planning working hand in glove to ensure that the folks that guide us tell us how we want our city to look through representation. Let's make sure they have a hand on it as well through our EDAC committee. So if we can re-expand on our EDAC committee, get them focused again on the task at hand, and let them work through the people here in the gallery and those that are not here today to ensure that our planning and our EDAC are working together. Other than that, I agree. I think we've hit the nail. I like that the top priority is public safety. I think that truly is our job is in government. If everything else goes away, we still have to be safe. And we have outstanding fire department and sheriff's department that bring public safety right to us every single day. They do phenomenal work, and we just need to give them the tools and resources they need to be successful, and that goes to our city staff as well. Okay.
Do we need to vote on that?
I believe we do vote to approve the goals. So is there a motion to approve or adopt the goals for 2023?
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion from Councilman Gardner. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A second from Councilman Thorpe. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 5-0. Moving on to a study session, item number 13. This is going to be Ben Matlock, service stations and car wash facilities.
All right, thank you, Alderman Mayor and City Council members. I'll keep my presentation brief just because I wanted to give the opportunity for all the council members to weigh in on the discussion. Right now, as part of the city's development code, fuel stations and car washes are kind of a service-oriented use that's allowed through a conditional use permit in our commercial and industrial land use districts. However, we did approach a discussion in August of 2021 about a potential moratorium on those uses or expansion. We do have a number that have either been constructed, entitled, in the pipeline, or kind of discussed. At the time, council ultimately voted not to impose a moratorium and kind of, allow the market to kind of dictate. Since then, we've had a number of more applications turned in or discussions, and so we've actually increased the fuel stations by 2 and 4 for car washes. However, our population itself has not grown by that level of need, and so I want to provide an opportunity for council to weigh in on whether or not we should reevaluate how these uses are treated and either provide some limitations or additional guidance for applicants that are looking to develop these particular uses in the city. And that concludes my presentation, and I will be happy to answer any questions as you guys conduct the study session.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Certainly.
Yeah. I had asked that this be placed for discussion on the agenda tonight to get a sense of how the council, what your thoughts are on this. We have received an application. It's going through the process. Entitlements have not yet been given, but it's for another car wash, same brand that was recently built on Yucaipa Boulevard, and another coffee shop, same brand that was recently built on Yucaipa Boulevard. And the proposed location is right on the boulevard, more or less directly across the street from the shopping center that includes Big Five. And it's a real key prime area for development for the city, for economic development in the future. Not far from that property, there is the Hitching Post mobile home park. I know the new owner is thinking about redevelopment there, maybe changing uses. This would be very close to that. And it just struck me that, along Yucaipa Boulevard, and especially as we get up into the uptown, we're really going for a certain vibe. We want it to be walkable. We want it to be restaurants and shops to draw people there. I'm just not sure that continuing to eat up prime developable economic development area on Yucaipa Boulevard with additional car washes, for example, is consistent with the vision the city has for that area. Along the lines of what the city attorney was talking about, I do think we need to go through our development code and we need to really decide on and put into our code what that vision is, so that people know on the front end what it is the city's looking for. In the meantime, how many more of these uses do we allow before it really stops us from achieving the vision of the city along Yucaipa Boulevard? So I had asked that this be put on. I know I had strong feelings on the matter, but I don't make these decisions, you do. So I thought I would bring it up for discussion. If you are in agreement, then staff will put together the documents to come back at a future meeting.
So with that being said, before we go further, we do have two public speakers on the matter. So Mr. Nick Wyrick, if you could please approach the podium, state your name and your address for the record, followed by Mr. Chris Pete. I'll give you the same instructions, sir. Give your name and address for the record once you arrive.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilman. Nick Wyrick, 7976 Kimberly Jean Court, Riverside, California. I've been a broker representing tenants and landlords in the Inland Empire for 24 years, and I've been involved in many of the significant commercial real estate developments in the city of Yucaipa. City's been a very good business partner over the last 25 years.
If you could just speak into the microphone, sir.
Sure.
Thank you.
So the city's been a very good business partner over the last 25 years, and I feel I've done the same. Use moratoriums are always tricky and usually begin with a well-intended thought or belief and end with unintended consequences. For example, the first example is that most commercial developments are multi-use developments with uses relying on each other in a synergistic manner. Using a scalpel to remove a certain use often has impact in one of two ways. One is economic. Both of the uses you're proposing to cut out in a moratorium are typically higher paying rent uses and often offset other users that both the city and the constituents may really want. The second is a compatibility or synergy of users. A real life example of this is Panera Bread, who is able to approve Yucaipa Point in small part because of the vehicular traffic that Quick Quack generates and how that would impact their drive-through business. That was a real impact in getting that deal approved. That was a client of mine, and we struggled on that for almost 3 years to get that approved. So moratoriums don't just stop the building of your intended targets, they usually have a broader economic impact. Further, the modern car wash is a product that offers a technological advancement where innovation and automation give a really high quality product to the general public. Further, a high percentage of the water that they use is recycled, and given the drought conditions we faced in the not so distant past, I would feel that this would be a nice amenity for a community like Yucaipa. Both of these uses require a significant capital investment and typically offer state-of-the-art facilities. I would like to implore the council to give the idea of a moratorium like this considerable thought and seek to understand all of the consequences that this potential action may cause. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chris, I believe it's Mr. Chris Pete, is that correct? If you just state your name and your address, please.
Good evening. My name is Chris Pito, P-E-T-O. My address is 1011 Camino del Mar, San Diego, California. I thank the mayor and council and staff for letting me speak here tonight. I think my project is the reason city manager asked for this to be here today. The project is a second location for two retailers that are operating over capacity on a building that's been vacant for over 10 years. I've been working on Yucaipa Boulevard. Tenants that I've worked with in the town have spent tens of millions of dollars on investment and infrastructure within the city and plan to continue to do so going forward. There's been no interest in this building. There's been no tenant, no leasing. The current property owner has no interest in doing anything with the property that's going to cost him more money than rehabbing the existing facility, and it's not reusable. There's a huge basement underneath, a vault. This was a site-specific project. The depth and location of the site is very specific and fits very, very well. We started working on this project in October of 2021. The timing of that was directly tied into what the council was trying to do to see if it was going to be supported. We then had a follow-up meeting with then city manager, city attorney, March 29th of 2022, where representatives on our side met with them to see if there was a concern about the location, moratorium restrictions, and we were told no. full speed ahead and to proceed. Last month, it's taken us 18 months. The project was deemed complete. We've put together a Q analysis with a traffic study, noise study, construction level civil engineering, design drawings, architectural drawings, sign programs. It's a complete package deemed complete. We were informed that the project was going to go to Planning Commission 4/19/2023 as the first item. We had representatives from both of our tenants on both real estate and operations flying in from 5 different locations so that they could address concerns, questions, and explain why they feel this is a good location for them. I was notified early last week that the project was not going to go on the agenda. Typically, with something like this, I work very closely with cities on developments. This is actually a relatively small project for me. About 25% of my business is working with cities when they're trying to rebrand themselves, come up with a new location, and to figure out how they're going to attract businesses. Several communities out in this area I meet with on a regular basis to have those discussions. So does the gentleman who just spoke before me. Be happy to participate in a roundtable if the city would like to have representatives, developers like myself, tenants come in and explain what's going on. The fact is the tenants who are currently in town are operating over capacity. And as staff has informed me, there have been traffic issues. And this location offers an opportunity for them to serve the community better and alleviate some of those items. And we have the studies that prove that. I'm available. I think staff has my contact information if anybody would like to reach me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor, I just wanted to make it, pretty clear that although the city manager mentioned a project as being the inspiration for this conversation, and obviously we have representatives from a specific project coming in, this is not a hearing on that project. This is a legislative act to decide whether you want to temporarily stop the issuance of all permits for any project of that specific type, while the city manager studies that particular use and determines whether additional standards need to be put in place, additional regulations need to be put in place, or whether there needs to be some other restriction on the use. So I heard a lot of back and forth about the project. I just wanted to caution the council, maybe focus on the overall legislative act, which is the moratorium.
Thank you.
Is that why is that why this project was pushed to a different date? Because of this concern?
Yes, sir.
So if I, at any given time, go on to the Yucaipa Bulletin and type in one of like 5 words, gas station, car wash, tire shop, smoke shop, or coffee shop, this council and the councils of the past are heckled as the only thing Yucaipa knows how to build are those 5 things. That's because we have them everywhere. I mean, goodness gracious, and I use the car washes. I go to Fast Five because it's closer to my house, and I never wait in line. And quite frankly, these are probably projects that are difficult to undo. It's not like it's a retail shop that can be regenerated into another retail shop over and over again. I was the one who championed the cause of a moratorium of gas stations in 2021, and I was defeated in a 4-1 vote, and I accepted that. But since then, we've had discussions every single time there's something brought before the council for some kind of build, it's a gas station. And I close my eyes and look at, sure enough, there's a gas station. I mean, I don't think we need any more gas stations in Yucaipa. To that point, drive-through car washes or otherwise. My only thought, if we were going to do that, just so there's not a broad brush stroke, is if it exists within a certain mileage of a pre-existing car wash, then we don't need another one. It's already there, is my thought. The reason I say that is there's currently nothing of that sort near like Bryant and Oakland, where there's been talks of kind of a commercial project on the northeast corner for 30 years that has never come to fruition. However, I believe that there could be some viable use there. So that's from the center seat. I don't think we need any more car washes, gas stations, or the other plethora of things that I find myself getting heckled for every time somebody wants to build one that I have it's coming through the planning commission process. But I do think we've had quite a few. I think we have something like, I don't know what the number is. I think it was like 15 or 16 gas stations in the city of Yucaipa proper, and then some even, Calamasa, they got some on the border. So that's my spot. I don't know if anybody else wants to.
Well, this came before, do you want to speak?
Well, I was just going to say, Mr. Mayor, to your point, I brought this up primarily to save my marriage for that exact reason. I think of another car wash went up on Yucaipa Boulevard, my wife would leave Yucaipa. And I'm sorry if she was one of the people who heckled you. Thank you.
So we dealt with this, where's Ben at, Ben? We dealt with this, what, 5, 6, a year ago? This came before us back with the previous council, right?
Yeah, summer of 2021, so.
2021, okay. So my position then, I have a hard time telling a property owner if they own the land and they have the money to build something on that land, this being America and not communist China, or some other, socialist country, if they want to build it there, they can build it there, in my opinion. I think issuing a moratorium on anything is a problem in the United States of America. I know other cities have done it, but I'm absolutely opposed to it.
What about a brothel on private property?
Brothel?
It's my property, I can build whatever I want to on it, right?
Well, that's a different issue.
So there
right
are,
there
okay,
altogether,
there are
a
exceptions.
brothel.
There's
But a
reasons
ga-
we cannot
But a
have
gas
things.
station is not a brothel.
We have enough. Sorry, I digress.
I don't necessarily like moratoriums either. I think that you have to take things, some projects by case, depending on what the business is, to your point. But when we've already got something that's going through a certain amount of process to this point, not to spend a lot of time talking about this particular project, but if they've gotten to a certain point, we need to probably take that into consideration as well as to, if we do a moratorium, it would need to be probably beyond this particular project, because if we do something now, and they've already been going through the process, granted, it needs to go to the planning commission, and their ruling could be different than we're thinking. But because that's been in the process, I think we have to be careful. At the same token, I have to agree a little bit with Justin that there are a few businesses that it seems like we find what works and then we just beat that down to a dead horse. And I would like to see some other things come into town, maybe besides just gas stations and some of the other things he's mentioned. But I think with this particular item, we need to proceed a little cautiously just because something's already kind of in the hopper a little bit.
Councilman, thank you. And to be clear, this project, while they've been going through a process, they do not currently have the entitlement to build this. In fact, I don't know if I defer to the city attorney, maybe ask him to comment on where that line typically is in the process.
So you can tailor this within reason. So the standard language for most moratoriums would say this won't affect any legally existing, whatever the use is that you're doing the moratorium on. And that's usually defined as either one that's valid, existing, and operating. That one's pretty obvious. Or one that is not currently existing, but is subject to a development agreement, a vesting map, or who has been entitled, has received building permits, and has done substantial work and incurred liabilities, I think is the test. I might be paraphrasing it a little bit. That being said, some communities, so, one of the other jurisdictions I represent did a moratorium on self-storage facilities, because like you said, that seemed to be the only thing coming forward in that community. And they allowed any that had a deemed complete application to continue through, but held off on everybody else. So the line I gave you is the standard, it's the default. You can move it if, for example, you want to. But again, I would encourage you to think in terms of the overall legislative act, not in terms of any specific project.
And to that point, as well as council can also add additional provisions. So in the staff report, both from 2021, as well as this, as maybe additional consideration for the freeway corridor, specific plan where you may have a more kind of regional type anchor tenant that would be looking, and so they may have a fuel station as part of their standard business model.
Mm-hmm.
And so that may be something where unique consideration may also be applicable.
I do have a quick go back. Do we currently have any moratoriums in the city that prohibit, reduce or stop any type of business in our city? Or are we moratorium free?
The only use that is specifically called out as completely prohibited is related to commercial cannabis-related businesses. But we do have provisions that if it's not allowed in the development code, there are other uses that are also prohibited, either in districts or citywide as well. But that one's called out just because of the way state law required cities to deal with it. So there are other uses that are prohibited.
I think we have, don't we have an automotive shop type moratorium in the uptown?
That we do. The Uptown Corridor Business specific plan does include prohibitions on certain uses in the different categories to make sure that it creates kind of that walkable urban environment that's more appropriate to a historic district. And so automotive related uses typically work in contrary to that environment pretty substantially. So.
And Mayor, one of the things that you're talking about, a moratorium is a temporary prohibition. We do have several permanent prohibitions that are in the code and in the specific plans. You may have businesses that are prohibited but are still operating. Those are called legal non-conforming, just so that we're all speaking the same language. And usually that happens when you have a neighborhood or a business district that's in transition. So it used to be a certain kind of neighborhood or business district and you want it to be something else. So you say, okay, no more, right? So we're not gonna entitle any new ones. And if you have one, you don't get to make it bigger. So the idea is to transition it slowly while respecting those existing businesses. So that's why you'll see some of those businesses still operating in that district.
Understood. Councilman Gardner, any questions of staff?
Yeah, I'm not one for telling someone they can't build something on their property. As a business owner, if they want to open a business, I think they should have free reign on that. But I do think that we've got a lot of car washes. And I don't, car washes and coffee shops, I mean, we're hammered with them. I don't know if we should. This is a tough one. I think, I don't think we should have any more car washes. I think we got plenty of car washes, but that's my opinion.
Did I skip you, sir?
That's okay.
Sorry, you're so small, I didn't see you there.
I'm a tiny guy. How about Mexican food places?
Oh, that's another one that's up there on the list, let me tell you.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I kind of like this. I do. It kind of keeps our community a little bit tighter, I think. You know what I mean? And I am for people who have their properties and stuff. But I mean, I think that this would be a good overall thing for the city to kind of keep a lot of the other businesses down.
So this is a study session. What is required of us? Do we take a formal vote to approve this, or are you gonna come back to us with something more?
So no formal vote is required. If, the general sense of the council is that's something you'd like to see, we'll draft it up. Staff was listening to the feedback, so we'll bring a draft moratorium forward, and you'll have an opportunity at that point to review the specific language if there's tweaks. Like Ben said, you may be comfortable with an accessory car wash going in, but maybe not the primary use. You may have geographical limitations that you want to place on it. Maybe you're okay with it being down by the freeway, but you want to slow down the uptown development. So I think we got kind of the feedback. So a draft will be coming forward at the next available meeting.
Are we gonna stall that project while we make this decision?
Yes, sir. However, we will bring something as quickly as possible. And in the meantime, staff is happy to meet with this particular applicant, which I believe that meeting has been requested and is in the works.
And when you mentioned the moratorium could be temporary, are you going to consider a time frame? Is it open-ended? Are we going to put a time bracket on that?
So they are temporary under state law. So the initial moratorium can only go in place for 45 days. And then it may be extended by 10 months, 15 days, which is a total of a year. And then you can do one more year if you're still studying it. But by then you should have, hopefully after 2 years, you should have something solved. Usually you can get it done much faster than that. And essentially you can look at, maybe you are okay with car washes, but maybe you want a buffer from residential. Maybe you don't think they're appropriate in the uptown. Maybe you are comfortable with them being in the uptown, but you want certain requirements. So it gives you time to study that and bring it back. And then the last thing I just wanted to say, I heard the question was, are you going to stall the application? The city does have discretion on when to bring an application forward. It is a conditional use permit. If it was brought forward next week, it could still be denied. So I do think that the intent is to work with that particular applicant to let them know the conversation that's been happening here. Obviously, they were present, but I don't think the intent would be to take any illegal act and unlawfully delaying the project.
But in defense of the applicant, they've been working on this and they heard this previous council say, no, we're not going to have a moratorium, so they moved on. I mean, they moved the project forward based on what this council decided.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I understand what you're saying, and we will move as diligently as possible. I am sympathetic to the applicant. As members of this public have pointed out, in a previous life, I used to consult for developers, so I understand, and I'm sympathetic. That being said, every developer knows when they go down this path, they do it at their own risk. If you're asking for something that isn't, you don't have entitlements for. Fact of the matter is, the community has a right to determine what we want our community to look like. And every developer knows that reality. And so we're happy to work with the developer. If the council decides to impose a moratorium, we're happy to. We have a phenomenal gentleman that handles our economic development work. Happy to have him work with the applicant to find uses that would be more suitable. Happy to be helpful in any way we can.
How far are they in this thing?
The project itself was deemed complete about a month ago, so it has been reviewed internally for conditions, and those conditions have been provided to the applicant.
Oh, so they're in deep then.
All right, thank you. I think we've provided plenty of clarity to our city staff, and we're going to move on to the final portion of our city council meeting, which is announcements. Is there any member on the council that has anything to announce? I don't hear any. Mr.
Just that the Music and Arts Festival is May 5th, and this is April the 10th. So what, a month, less than a month, we have the next festival.
Metalachi. Look him up on YouTube.
And I'm looking forward to that. It'd be nice to do something pleasant.
Outstanding. Mr. City Attorney, can you please announce closed session?
Yes, Mayor, we have 3 items for closed session. We have a liability claim by Michael and Melody Murrieta. We have significant exposure to litigation in relation to the Fallbrook Meadows application denial. And then we also have a actual existing litigation. This is Thomas Christian v. Kim Clark, San Bernardino Superior Court case. They'll be discussing. I expect there will be a report out, so after we're done with closed session, come out here and make a quick report and then adjourn.
Thank you. I will adjourn the meeting of the open session.
Hey, man, great job. You did a good job on that.